According to a recent report, the Tennessee Titans are out on Sam Darnold. We'll go over what it means on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, on today's show, we're going to do a free agency preview of the offensive line. We're going to talk tackles. We're going to talk interior offensive line options. But we're going to start with a recent report saying that the Tennessee Titans are out on Sam Darnold, but at a certain price. Before we get into all of that, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one because it is one of the busiest times of the year when it comes to breaking news. Free agency starts next week. We're in the middle of our free agency preview. On tomorrow's show, we're going to dive into the defense. I'm going to have a full free agency primer for you on Sunday night. And then the legal tampering period opens on Monday. So make sure that you stay up to date and as informed as possible on your Tennessee Titans with me here on the Locked On Titans podcast. But with that being said, we've been talking about Sam Darnold a lot this week. And, the reality is I don't want Sam Darnold for the Tennessee Titans. It's been something that I've been out on all along. But the reality is the options are getting slim. And when you start to look at realistic options that I think the Tennessee Titans would actually be willing to do, they get lower and lower every day. At this point, you basically have a situation where it's Sam Darnold or Cam Ward, right? We've heard that the Tennessee Titans are out on Aaron Rodgers. The report that we're getting ready to talk about says that the Titans aren't that interested in Aaron Rodgers. Well, outside of that, who are other starters that could even make sense? Russell Wilson, word is he wants to go back to the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, Carr and Cousins never became available. So it's Darnold, it's Rodgers, it's Wilson. I don't think that Wilson makes sense for the Titans as a scheme fit. They're not interested in Rodgers. And now we're hearing that they're out on Sam Darnold at the price that Sam Darnold is likely to command. So if all of those options are off the board, what is the other option for the Titans? It's Cam Ward, and that's the only one. So that's what makes this so interesting. But let's go over this report first. Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com tweeted on Wednesday morning, the Titans aren't going to be into Sam Darnold. If he was shorter-term, cheaper option, sure. But as long as he's going to be long-term, high-dollar commitment for somebody, it's not going to be them. Pretty definitive, and I know that Paul Kuharsky has his detractors, and look, the reality is Paul hasn't really been that kind to me either. But I can admit, Paul does great work for the team, okay? And he, out of all of the Titans beat reporters, is the one who gets the most inside information and the most scoops. So Paul mentioning this makes it very easy. Again, in his article, he says, quote, the Titans don't appear interested in Aaron Rodgers. He goes on to say, I believe, and this is his opinion, obviously, I believe the Titans, if they pass on Ward and Sanders to trade down, and he says, who seem less attractive to them, are prepared for a worst-case scenario where they sign a stopgap player like Mac Jones or Jameis Winston at quarterback and go for him with Levis in 2025. This is what I talked about 2 episodes ago when I went over my free agent options at quarterback. I said there are guys who I think could realistically be starter for the Titans, Carr or Cousins, but they're unavailable. Darnold, Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers. They don't want Rodgers. Wilson isn't a fit. If they don't want to pay Darnold, which I'm fine with, don't pay Sam Darnold. Great. But then after that, the other options you have are compete with Will Levis, which is Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, Daniel Jones, Desmond Ridder. Like, That's what you're looking at there if you don't want to go with one of those starting level veterans and you don't want to go with the rookie quarterback. So it makes sense that if they don't want Darnold and they're not interested in the older veterans and Rodgers and Wilson, and they want to trade down in the draft, which means they can't get one of those two quarterbacks, well, then there aren't a lot of other options other than compete with Will Levis, Mac Jones, Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew got released. Maybe he's in that group. But again, the reason why throughout the offseason, I have said I like Derek Carr. I would take Kirk Cousins on a vet minimum. Aaron Rodgers makes a ton of sense for me. I think that Sam Darnold is likely to go to the Titans, even if I don't want Sam Darnold. I still think, why? Because Brian Callahan needs to win. I'm sorry, but if you go into 2025 with Will Levis and Mac Jones, Brian Callahan's fired. It's over. Just fire him now. There is no way in the world that Brian Callahan keeps his job with the compete with Will Levis tier of quarterbacks. Mac Jones, Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is just Will Levis in a different package. It's the same dude. Mac Jones, Jameis Winston, Gardner Minshew, Daniel Jones, Jacoby Brissett, Desmond Ridder, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and Will Levis. You pair one of those names with Will Levis, and that's your quarterback answer in 2025? Listen, I'm okay with it if they truly, the reason I didn't think that this was a possibility is because Brian Callahan would know that he's fired. His job is over. He's a lame duck coach. He's getting fired probably by Thanksgiving. There's no way that they would set Brian Callahan up to be canned like that. I would be fine with it because then you could trade back, kick the can down the road. You don't commit long-term to a Sam Darnold type. Like, okay, fine. But I got to be honest. I have a really hard time believing that they would do that to Brian Callahan. Like, I just have a hard time believing that. Now, the one thing that I do want to mention here before we move on from this discussion is Paul Kaharski's report said long-term, high money. He said if it was shorter term, lower money, then it would make sense. So if Sam Darnold is 2 years, $60 million, $30 million a year, say you give him $40 million guaranteed. You can get out of the contract after 1 year if you need to with, $10 million of dead money. If they want to do that, that makes sense. But again, this is at the cost that most people were anticipating for Sam Darnold, which is low-end starting quarterback money, $40 million a year. If Sam Darnold's going to get that, I've never been interested, and it's good news that the Titans are out on that too. Like, that's what we want to hear. We do not want the Tennessee Titans giving Sam Darnold a $40 million a year contract. But at $30 million, with way less years, now that makes some sense. Now that's worth the risk at that point because it's not super financially punitive. It's not that big a deal. You'd probably have to pay Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr or not Kirk Cousins because of the vet minimum, but you'd probably have to pay Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr if he became available. You'd probably have to pay him about something like that. So if we're paying, the lowest tier level for starting quarterback money, then it's possible. But the point is, the options are running out, and they're running out quick. So I'm very curious what the Titans do at quarterback. And I'll be honest with you. I'm just going to say this quick. I'm going to take the pin out of the grenade, throw it, and run away. Something that we might talk about. What if the Titans traded for Brock Purdy? We're hearing some whispers that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams want to join forces on the West Coast. What if the 49ers don't want to pay Brock Purdy and the Titans look at a trade? I don't know how I feel about it, but just throwing stuff out there, seeing what happens. Anyway, with that being said, offensive line free agency, it is ugly. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet healthcare. Chewy makes it fast easy, and affordable. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Chewy. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food to treats to toys to beds to grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They have supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth visits, and even in-person vet clinics. Auto ship is a game changer, especially for me. My dog loves the little lamb chop toys, and he rips them apart all the time. So I just keep them on auto ship so that he never runs out of his favorite toy. Chewy has everything that you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about the recent report on the Tennessee Titans status with Sam Darnold. Now I want to get back into our free agency preview. I talked about the quarterbacks. I did a full episode on the quarterbacks. Then we talked about the skill position players, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. Now I want to get to the offensive line. And quite frankly, outside of quarterback, where I think the Titans could make some sort of move, I didn't want to see the Titans make any significant move at running back, wide receiver, or tight end. Number one, draft class is really good at running back and tight end. So if you want one, get one in the draft late on day 3. Wide receiver, a lot of old guys that are past their prime. They're going to be more expensive than what they're worth. I'm not doing that either. The Titans need to draft and develop young wide receivers. And that includes DK Metcalf. Listen, I don't want to be rude to people listening to my show. I don't intentionally mean to insult you, but the reality is Galaxy Brain fans want everyone that becomes available. DK Metcalf requests a trade. Oh, we want DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf makes 0 sense for the Titans. Number one, he is entering the back half of his career. The Titans are a terrible team with the first pick in the draft who's rebuilding. By the time the Titans are good enough to take advantage of a DK Metcalf, the reality is he'll probably be 30. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Giving up you would have to give up pick number 35 and then give DK Metcalf $33 million a year. You already are paying a 30-year-old wide receiver in Calvin Ridley. I'm sorry, this is not Madden. Like, DK Metcalf said he wants to play for contender anyway. The Titans are not trading for any of these expensive veterans. They're not getting Myles Garrett. They're not getting DK Metcalf. They're not getting Brandon Ayuk. It's not happening. Stop. They're not getting any of these guys. They are drafting and developing and rebuilding the worst team in the NFL. You're not making win now. They're not trading for Matthew Stafford. You know what I mean? Like, stop it. Stop. But anyway, offensive tackle is what I want to talk about first. And I would rather the Tennessee Titans get a potential starter in free agency at guard and at offensive tackle to make sure that they're not screwed if they go into the draft with only 2 top 100 picks and they can't trade down. What if the Titans take Cam Ward and then they take an edge rusher at 35, which is what all you quarterback people are saying. All of you quarterback people are saying, take Cam Ward, and this edge class is really good. They can get an edge at 35. All right, well, where do they get a starting right tackle? So that's why I want to, and Mike Borgonzi has said this as well, we want to fill as many holes in free agency as you can so that you're not pigeonholed when you get into the draft. And offensive tackle is a massive hole at right tackle especially. Now, Ronnie Stanley, top free agent left tackle, gone. Not going to be on the market, okay? That means that the best offensive tackle that's going to be available is Cam Robinson. Cam Robinson was the Jags left tackle for a long time. He got traded to Minnesota last year. He is a good pass blocker, but he's 30 years old. He's never been an excellent run blocker, which I think matters to the Tennessee Titans. And he's probably going to get $15 to $20 million a year. And if you sign Cam Robinson, now you got to kick J.C. Latham to right tackle for what, a year or two when you have Cam Robinson who's 30 years old? So you're going to have Cam Robinson for 1 to 2 years, and then J.C. Latham is going to be on the last year of his rookie contract and have to go back to left tackle, or you just need a left tackle again? Draft and develop. Cam Robinson is not the answer for the Tennessee Titans, not because he's a terrible player, but because he's going to be too expensive and too old, that combination, for where the Titans are at. Same thing with Tyron Smith, coming off an okay year with the New York Jets. Everybody says the New York Jets offensive line was terrible, and then says, oh, Tyron Smith, he's done. He's 34 years old. He's going to be $8 to $10 million. The Titans don't need Tyron Smith. Again, he's been a left tackle his entire career. So you're going to move J.C. Latham to right tackle for this? It's a combination of his age, his injury concerns, and then effect on J.C. Latham. Those three things together, like with Cam Robinson, his price, his play style, and his effect on J.C. Latham, those three reasons together, and then Tyron Smith's three reasons together make them not logical options, in my opinion. Now, you want to talk about an older player who does make sense? If you want to go with Morgan Moses, he's 34 like Tyron Smith, but it'll only be about $5 to $6 million. That is a perfect scenario. A stopgap starter who plays right tackle for a living, so you don't move J.C. Latham. You don't have to go with a guy who's going to be expensive. So he may be old, but he's cheap. And he doesn't affect J.C. Latham. So Morgan Moses is probably the best option for the Titans right now, because outside of that, I only see two other options that would make sense. Number one is Dan Moore. Dan Moore was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but the Steelers can't wait to get rid of Dan Moore. He's going to make like 10, 15 million as like a low-end starter offensive tackle. He's only 26, but he's not good in pass protection. He's terrible in pass protection. The Steelers' offensive line was bad last year. I'm not taking scraps off the Steelers' offensive line that cost $10 to $15 million, even at 26 years old. Now, a guy I do think makes a ton of sense, and honestly, Morgan Moses is probably the best option player-wise, but the very best fit for the Tennessee Titans, for me, is Jedrick Wills. Wills is still 26 years old, so still young. You don't get that with Tyron Smith, Cam Robinson, or Morgan Moses. He's going to be cheaper than all of them at $3 to $5 million because he had injury issues the last 2 years. But he has a connection with Brian Callahan. He played right tackle in college, left tackle in the pros, so he could play either side. Think, if the Titans have J.C. Latham at left tackle and they draft a right tackle in the second round, like a Ariante Ursery or something like that. Imagine if they trade back to pick 6 and they take Armand Membo. If you have Latham and Membo, so Latham and a rookie, and then Jedrick Wills is your third tackle who can play right tackle, play left tackle, maybe start over the rookie if the rookie's not 100% ready. That is the best way to attack your offensive tackle position. And you keep in mind that Jedrick Wills had some great seasons for the Browns under Bill Callahan as his coach. And if Jedrick Wills stays healthy at 26 years old, the Titans may have their right tackle and their left tackle for the next 4 years, or at least 3 years, figured out. You would have Jedrick Wills until he's 30 with J.C. Latham on his rookie contract. I mean, I know that he's dealt with injury issues in the past, but for the age and the price, to me, Jedrick Wills is by far the best option for the Tennessee Titans at right tackle when it comes to fit and potential. Morgan Moses may be better this year, but if Jedrick Wills is healthy and plays his best football, he's better than Morgan Moses, and he's 8 years younger. So Morgan Moses is the best older veteran option. Jedrick Wills is the best option overall. Outside of that, there are no starters, in my opinion. George Fant is 2 years older from when we wanted him. DJ Humphries couldn't even get on the field for the Chiefs despite their issues. And Andrews Pete, still a guy dealing with injuries who the Titans didn't want last year. So to me, it's Morgan Moses or it's Jedrick Wills, or it's bust. And you better pray to the gods that you find an offensive tackle in the draft. But with that being said, let's look at the interior offensive line. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Doing a free agency preview of the offensive line position. Talk Sam Darnold at the top of the show. Remember, on tomorrow's show, we are going to look at the defense. I haven't quite decided whether I'm doing secondary on tomorrow's show or front seven on tomorrow's show. Haven't made up my mind on that quite yet, but I'm going to do a bonus episode on Friday. A sixth episode for this week. Going to be a ton of bonus content coming up with all the free agent stuff. I'm also, just so you guys know, I'm going to say this the next couple of episodes. I am going to record later than I normally do next week during free agency. So instead of coming out at 6 p.m. Eastern, shows are probably going to come out at 8 p.m. Eastern so that I have a little bit more time to wait for news to happen. Because I'm tired of, having to record multiple shows every single day, all free agency long. I might as well just wait and be patient and bring you guys all the news at the end of the night. So I hope you guys understand that I might release the show a little later than normal for free agency next week. But with that being said, we get into the interior offensive line. So like I said, not a lot of options at offensive tackle for the Titans that are great. But on the interior offensive line, there are some decent options. It's just about how much the Tennessee Titans are willing to pay. And me personally, once Trey Smith came off the board and got franchise tagged by the Kansas City Chiefs, at that moment, I was like, I don't know if I want to pay up for guard anymore. I like Trey Smith because he is a high-level player with great character that fits the culture, and Mike Borgonzi's connection, like, that all makes sense. But anybody in the next tier down for guard just doesn't make a lot of sense for me. You have Will Freeze, who played guard for the Colts the last few years. He's coming off a bad injury that knocked him out for the season in week 5. He's probably going to get $10 to $15 million as a pretty good level starting guard. Are the Titans willing to pay $10 to $15 million for a guard when they're paying what they're paying for Lloyd Cushenberry and they drafted a guard in the first round 2 years ago? Like, that just seems like too many resources at guard, in my opinion. But maybe they're so fed up with the offensive line being bad that they're just like, screw it, whatever it takes, I guess. But Will Freeze is a good player when healthy. If he's healthy, he is a good player, big, solid, stocky player who's good in pass protection. So that would make sense. But I don't know if I want to pay. For me at guard, either I'm paying top tier money for one of the best in the game, like a Quentin Nelson or a Trey Smith, or a Landon Dickerson, or I'm not paying anything. Like, it's how I feel about linebacker. Either you're absolutely elite and then I'm paying you, or I'm going cheap. Because I don't want to pay Will Freeze $10 to $15 million. Tevin Jenkins has had a ton of injuries in his career. He's been moved from left guard or left tackle to right tackle to left guard, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, he's had to move a ton. He's only 27, but he's had so many injuries. He's not that great of a player. He is very physical, though, and I think that would appeal to the Tennessee Titans and Bill Callahan on the offensive line. But that's another guy who's probably going to get $10 to $15 million. And I just don't think that Tevin Jenkins is worth $10 to $15 million. If the Titans were a win-now team right now and they needed to plug in a guard, then sure, maybe. But I don't know. I think both Freeze and Jenkins are good players. They're just not worth $10 to $15 million, in my opinion. It's just not worth it. Kevin Zeitler, 35 years old. Why would they do that? I just don't. Why would Kevin Zeitler want to do that for his final years in the NFL? James Daniels, coming from the Steelers, he blew his Achilles out in week 4. The Titans going to have 2 guys starting on the offensive line this year, recovering from torn Achilles. You're going to pay $5 to $7 million for James Daniels? I don't think so. Mekhi Becton, probably going to get $10 to $12 million. He was a guy who completely flamed out his entire career until he got to the best roster we've seen in recent NFL history with the Eagles. Like, do I trust Mekhi Becton to not be a problem when he's not in a great locker room and he's with a rebuilding team? No, I don't think I want to do that. Not $10 to $12 million for Mekhi Becton. Heck no. And then after that, Brandon Scherf, 33 years old, coming from the Jaguars. Aaron Banks, he's only 27, coming from San Francisco, $8 to $10 million, but they run a ton of zone in San Francisco. They started running a little more gap recently, but does he fit schematically? I think if I had to pick out of those names, I would go with Aaron Banks for $8 to $10 million over the other options. But the reality is, out of all of those names, maybe you throw a Patrick McCarry in there, but I think he's more of a utility man on an offensive line, not a starter. I would take Dylan Radins at $5 million to $6 million over all those guys. If I could have Dylan Radins for a 2-year contract for $12 million, 2 years, $12 million for Dylan Radins, I would take that over any of these options, period. Freeze or Jenkins at 10 to 15. Becton, Banks at 8 to 12. 33-year-old Scherf. James Daniels coming off an Achilles. 35-year-old Zeitler. Like, I'm just saying no to all of those. Just bring Dylan Radins back. Draft an interior offensive lineman in the draft. I know it's not a great draft, but like that just seems like a far better option to me than dishing out the kind of money that you would need to get one of these guards. I just can't be on board with it. I can't. Aaron Banks, maybe. But, yeah, I don't know. Again, this is why it's so important to draft and develop, guys. Usually, free agency is not good. Last year was one of the better free agent classes that I've seen. It's not that this year. And it's typically not because good teams don't typically let good players leave. And if you're in free agency, there's a reason. So I hope that this is a rude awakening to some people. Like, this is why I'm team trade down. The Titans have so far to go and so many spots to fill. And doing it through free agency with high-priced contracts and outbidding other teams and paying a premium for guys that aren't premium players, it's just not a smart way to build your team. It's not. So the Titans need as many draft picks as they could possibly get to try to fill all these spots with affordable players on rookie contracts that are at the beginning of their careers and can improve. So team trade down because you're not fixing the offensive line through free agency, and you can't fix edge, offensive line, wide receiver, and quarterback with what you have in the draft. Not if you take quarterback number 1 overall. You just don't have enough. So with that in mind, hope you guys understand my philosophy a little bit more, but that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.